Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch. The relentless heat of the Utah desert shimmered against the rust-red cliffs as a small group of investigators stood frozen in time, their eyes fixed on a shallow depression in the rocky ground. What moments ago had been a routine exploration had suddenly become a potential revelation. Nestled between jagged shards of sandstone, half-cloaked in dust and age, lay the unmistakable curve of a human skull. Blind Frog Ranch, with its legends of Aztec treasure, hidden tunnels, and unexplained phenomena, had long been a magnet for adventurers, skeptics, and dreamers alike. But on this day, what had always been whispered folklore now threatened to become something far more real and far more disturbing. The discovery was made near a network of subterranean passageways that had been unearthed over several seasons of excavation. The terrain, long considered sacred by local tribes and avoided by wildlife, had often yielded bizarre metallic anomalies and signs of ancient habitation. But until now, no definitive proof of ritualistic activity had emerged. The skull was ancient. Its surface bore the patina of centuries, and initial analysis showed it had been exposed to extremely dry conditions for a prolonged period, helping preserve its structure. There was no obvious trauma, no shattered cranial plate, no evidence of blunt force trauma. But closer inspection revealed something more subtle, more sinister. Fine grooves near the occipital bone, delicate but deliberate, suggested the possibility of ceremonial defleshing, a practice not unknown in pre-Columbian Mesoamerican cultures. The idea of human sacrifice, long relegated to myths in this region, began to creep into the periphery of the investigation. The terrain surrounding Blind Frog Ranch had been notoriously difficult to map. Unusual magnetic anomalies and bizarre EMF readings had confounded both geologists and technicians. Strange lights at night, reports of disembodied whispers, and inexplicable mechanical failures only deepened the mystery. With the unearthing of the skull, the team now had something tangible, something that could bridge the chasm between legend and fact. Experts were brought in. Forensic anthropologists noted the skull belonged to a male in his mid-30s. The wear on the teeth suggested a diet rich in maize and roots, consistent with ancient indigenous populations. Radiocarbon dating estimated the age of the skull at around 700 to 1,000 years old, predating European contact. But what disturbed the team even more was the context. Not far from the skull's resting place, they discovered a semicircular arrangement of stones. Unlike the random scatterings found elsewhere on the property, this formation was intentional. Blackened scorch marks, barely visible to the untrained eye, marred the flat surfaces of several rocks. Soil analysis later confirmed the presence of organic residues, blood, burnt bone, and fatty tissues, suggestive of ritualistic fires. Even more enigmatic was the presence of a carved obsidian shard, wedged into a narrow crack nearby. The material was not native to the region. Obsidian, prized by Mesoamerican civilizations for its sharpness and spiritual potency, had to have been brought from hundreds of miles away. The carving on the shard, a spiral entwined with jaguar-like claws, bore a striking resemblance to glyphs used by Toltec and early Aztec shamans. The theory emerged. Was this part of a long-forgotten outpost of Mesoamerican civilization? Could explorers, priests, or exiles have fled northward, establishing secret enclaves away from the eyes of their enemies, or their gods? The ranch had always been tied to legends of lost gold, and stories of the conquistadors were etched into the oral histories of the region. But treasure, it seemed, might not be the most valuable secret buried in the earth. The possibility of ritual sacrifice, on American soil, centuries before the rise of modern cities, rewrote everything. As the team expanded their excavation, other strange finds emerged. animal bones arranged in concentric rings, charred fragments of woven cloth, and most perplexing of all, a crude stone idol, weathered almost beyond recognition, depicting a figure with a split face, one half human, the other skeletal. The symbolism of duality, life and death, echoed themes found throughout ancient sacrificial rites. Some team members began to voice concerns. The deeper they dug, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Electronics malfunctioned without cause. Batteries drained inexplicably. One camera operator described an overwhelming sense of dread whenever entering the lower caverns. Skeptics chalked it up to isolation and suggestion. Others weren't so sure. A native historian, brought in as a cultural consultant, suggested the site might be what her ancestors called a place of endings. A spiritual boundary and the dead grew thin. Such places, she explained, were avoided for a reason. They were not evil, but powerful. Dangerous in the wrong hands. Could the skull, then, be not merely a victim of sacrifice, but a guardian? A warning? An unplanned seismic scan of the area revealed another shock. Below the ritual site was a cavity, vast, irregular, and filled with pockets of water. This underground chamber had long been suspected, but never confirmed. What stunned the team was its layout. Narrow corridors leading to what appeared to be a central chamber. It resembled, uncannily, descriptions of underground temples from Mayan and Aztec mythology. Places where sacrifices were made not just to appease gods, but to open portals to other realms. One investigator proposed a theory. What if the sacrifice wasn't merely symbolic? What if those who performed the rite believed they were opening a gateway? What if Blind Frog Ranch was more than a resting place for treasure? What if it was a beacon? The producers at Discovery Channel faced a dilemma. The show had always straddled the line between entertainment and investigation. But with the skull and its implications, they were no longer dealing in speculation. Archaeological institutions began to take interest. The site, once dismissed as a playground for treasure hunters, was now being considered for protected status. Still, there were those who wanted the investigation to continue. Too much remained unanswered. Why was the skull buried only partially? Was it left exposed on purpose, as a marker? Why the sudden cluster of ritualistic artifacts in one location and nowhere else on the ranch? And, perhaps most chillingly, was this the only body further digs were planned, but delays mounted? Equipment failed. The weather turned erratic. And in one eerie twist, a drone flown over the site captured thermal images revealing footprints, dozens of them, moving across the desert at night. No living soul was seen in the footage. No trespassers. Just prints, appearing and vanishing like ghosts in the sand. As Season 3 of Mystery at the Blind Frog Ranch drew to a close, the skull was secured and sent to a remote lab for DNA extraction. Initial tests showed no match in existing databases. The man had no descendants, no known origin. His genetic markers were unique, ancient, and possibly representative of a lineage now extinct. In the final scene, viewers were shown an aerial shot of the ranch under moonlight. Wind swept through the canyons, rustling sagebrush and carrying with it the unanswered questions of centuries. The desert, as always, kept its silence. The Utah desert was no stranger to mystery. Its cracked, sun-bleached surface concealed more than just stone and fossil. Beneath its canyons and gullies, it hid stories that defied time. And among the most perplexing of these enigmas sat Blind Frog Ranch, a patch of rugged land tangled in folklore, riddled with caverns, and now the site of a chilling archaeological discovery. For months, the investigative team working at the ranch had been following faint trails. Strange electromagnetic readings, fluctuating radiation spikes, and local legends whispered of buried treasure, long-lost cultures, and even otherworldly activity. Still, despite countless hours of digging, scanning, and braving unpredictable terrain, nothing had prepared them for what they would find beneath the fractured earth. It began with a collapse. While exploring an uncharted cavern accessible only through a narrow vertical shaft, a minor tremor caused part of the tunnel to give way. The event exposed a chamber that had previously escaped detection. Light from the team's headlamps fell on the debris, revealing something that stopped them cold. The unmistakable dome of a human skull, protruding from the dirt at a shallow angle, as if placed there intentionally. Everything else fell away in that moment. The heat, the wind, the constant hum of machinery above, all replaced by an eerie stillness. The skull was old, unmistakably so. Its surface bore the marks of erosion and mineral exposure, suggesting it had rested there undisturbed for centuries. But what arrested attention, the chamber itself seemed deliberate, not the result of natural collapse, but of human design. Walls of stacked stones framed the skull's resting place. Charcoal remnants suggested fire, and beneath the skeletal remains lay objects not native to the region. Polished obsidian, carved bone fragments, and fragments of dyed fiber that still retained their deep red hue.